What if a lonely station in the Old West became the setting for 3 nights that would test courage, awaken hope, and forge bonds no one saw coming? This story takes you into a world of danger, resilience, and unexpected connections that could change everything. Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The scorching Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on the small wooden station house at Willow Creek, one of the few outposts of civilization in the vast desert landscape of 1882. Sarah Matthews wiped the sweat from her brow as she adjusted her simple cotton dress, gazing down the dusty main street with worry etched on her face. At 30 years old, she had already endured more hardship than most people twice her age. Her husband Thomas had passed away from tuberculosis just 8 months prior, leaving her to run the station house and raise their 6-year-old daughter, Emma, alone. "Mama, when is the next stage coming?" Emma asked, her blonde curls bouncing as she skipped along the wooden platform. Despite their circumstances, Emma maintained a cheerful disposition that often lifted Sarah's spirits. "Should be here before sundown, sweetheart," Sarah replied, shading her eyes to look at the horizon. "Why don't you help me prepare some stew for the passengers? They'll be hungry after their journey." The station house served as both their home and a rest stop for the twice-weekly stagecoach that connected Willow Creek to Tucson. It wasn't much, but it provided them with a modest living. As they stepped inside, Sarah felt a momentary respite from the heat. The main room was simple but tidy, with a large hearth, several tables for travelers, and a small counter where Sarah served meals. A narrow staircase led to their living quarters above. "Mama, can I put out the extra cups?" Emma, eagerly. "Of course, just be careful with the good ones." While Emma arranged the cups, Sarah checked their supplies. Food was running low, and she hoped the stage would bring the provisions she'd ordered from Tucson. Times were tight, and without Thomas's steady hand, managing the station had become increasingly difficult. The sound of approaching hooves drew their attention. Sarah peered through the window, surprised to see a lone rider rather than the expected stagecoach. "Stay inside, Emma," she instructed, reaching for the shotgun Thomas had taught her to use. Lone riders could mean trouble in these parts. Sarah stepped onto the porch, shotgun lowered but ready. The rider approached slowly, a tall man with copper skin and strong features that marked him as Apache. He wore a curious blend of traditional attire and white man's clothing, buckskin pants, a cotton shirt, and a worn leather vest. His long black hair was tied back with a simple leather cord. "Good afternoon," Sarah called, her voice steady despite her unease. Relations with the local tribes were peaceful these days, but old fears died hard. The man stopped his horse at a respectful distance. "Water for my horse," he said, his English clear though accented. "I can pay." Sarah hesitated only briefly. "There's a trough around back. You're welcome to water and rest your horse." The man nodded and guided his mount to the back of the station. Sarah remained vigilant, watching as he carefully attended to his horse, a fine painted Mustang that spoke of good breeding. When he returned, he extended a small pouch. "For the water." "That's not necessary," Sarah said. "Water's free in these parts. No one charges for what keeps us all alive." Something flickered in the man's dark eyes, perhaps surprise, perhaps approval. He nodded again and tucked the pouch away. "The stagecoach," he said, looking down the road. "It will not come today." Sarah's heart sank. "How do you know?" "Wash out at Canyon Creek. Saw it earlier. They will have to go around. Tomorrow, maybe the next day." This was troubling news. The passengers would have brought business, and more importantly, they needed those supplies. "Thank you for telling me," Sarah said. "Do you have far to travel? We serve meals here if you're hungry." The man considered her offer. "Not far, but food would be welcome." As Sarah led him inside, Emma peeked out from behind the counter, her blue eyes wide with curiosity. "Emma, this gentleman will be joining us for a meal," Sarah explained. "Sir, I'm Sarah Matthews, and this is my daughter, Emma." "Kaiten," he replied simply. "It means warrior in my language." Emma stepped forward boldly. "Do you really fight?" Do you have a bow and arrow? Emma, Sarah chided, embarrassed by her daughter's directness. But Caton's stern expression softened slightly. Yes, little one, I have fought, but today I am just a traveler. As Sarah prepared bowls of stew, she observed Caton's careful movements and alert eyes. He was clearly a man accustomed to watching his surroundings. There was something else about him, too, a sense of purpose that intrigued her. Little did Sarah know that this chance encounter would be the first of 3 nights that would change their lives forever. The following day brought no stagecoach and no relief from the oppressive heat. Sarah stood at the well, drawing water for their modest garden, when she spotted dust on the horizon. Her heart leapt, thinking the stage had finally arrived, but as the riders came into view, her hope turned to dread. 3 men on horseback approached the station, their unshaven faces and rough appearance marking them as the sort of trouble Thomas had always warned her about. The leader, a broad-shouldered man with a scar running down his left cheek, dismounted with a swagger that sent alarm bells ringing in Sarah's mind. Well, ain't this a pretty sight? He drawled, looking Sarah up and down. Lady running a station, all by her lonesome. Sarah straightened her back, clutching the water bucket. Can I help you, gentlemen? We're expecting the stage any time now. The man chuckled, revealing tobacco-stained teeth. Name's Fletcher. These here are my associates, Dawson and Reeves. And that stage you're waiting on ain't coming today. Washout's worse than they thought. Sarah's stomach tightened. How did they know about the washout? And more importantly, what did they want? We'll need rooms for the night, Fletcher continued, stepping closer. And whatever food you got. I'm afraid I don't have much to offer, Sarah replied, taking a step back. Our supplies are low until the stage arrives. Fletcher's eyes narrowed. That ain't very hospitable now, is it? We got money. He patted a bulging saddlebag. Just came into some good fortune, didn't we, boys? The other men laughed, a sound that made Sarah's skin crawl. Mama, Emma called from the doorway of the station. Sarah's heart raced. Go back inside, Emma. Now. Fletcher's gaze shifted to Emma, and a slow smile spread across his face. Well, ain't she precious? You got her right. Pretty family here, ma'am. My daughter and I manage just fine, Sarah said firmly. You can water your horses and rest a while, but I'm afraid I can't offer rooms. Fletcher's expression darkened. That ain't very neighborly. His hand moved to rest on the pistol at his hip. Maybe we need to teach you some manners about how to treat paying customers. The lady said no. The deep voice came from behind the station. All heads turned to see Caton standing there, his presence as unexpected as it was imposing. Fletcher's hand tightened on his pistol. This ain't your business, Injun. Best move along. Caton stepped forward slowly, his movements deliberate and calm. Sarah noticed he carried no visible weapon, yet the 3 men tensed as if facing an armed opponent. These lands belong to my people, Caton said quietly. What happens here is my business. Fletcher spat on the ground. Your people? Your people ain't got no claim to nothing anymore. This here's American territory now. A dangerous silence hung in the air. Sarah clutched the bucket handle tightly, ready to use it as a weapon if necessary. 3 men, Caton said evenly. 3 men robbed the mail coach 2 days ago near Canyon Creek. Killed the driver, took the strongbox. Dawson, the youngest of the 3, shifted nervously in his saddle. You accusing us of something, Injun? Fletcher growled, his hand now fully on his pistol. U.S. Marshal is 2 days behind you. Caton continued as if Fletcher hadn't spoken. With Apache trackers, they follow your trail. This news clearly unsettled the men. Reeves, who hadn't spoken yet, leaned down to whisper something to Fletcher. Fletcher's eyes darted between Caton and Sarah. You're lying. The washout was no accident, Caton replied. Rock slide made by my people, to slow you down. Sarah couldn't tell if Caton was bluffing, but his words had the desired effect. The 3 men exchanged uneasy glances. We don't want no trouble, Fletcher finally said, though his tone belied his words. We'll be moving on. But don't think. This is over, he pointed at Sarah. We'll be back when your protection ain't around. The men mounted their horses and rode off, casting venomous glances over their shoulders. Once they were out of sight, Sarah let out a shaky breath. "Thank you. But how did you know they were robbers?" "I didn't," Caton admitted. "But I saw their horses, good animals, government issue, and their saddlebags too full. They did not look like men who earned honestly." Sarah studied him with new eyes. "Why did you come back?" Caton looked toward the horizon, felt the wind change, storm coming. He nodded toward the garden she had been watering. "Your plants will need protection." Emma had ventured out and now stood beside her mother. "Are you going to stay and protect us too?" she asked Caton with childlike directness. The question hung in the air between them. Caton's expression remained unreadable, but something in his eyes softened as he looked at the little girl. "Yes," he finally said, "until the stage comes." That night, as a dust storm howled outside, Sarah sat at the kitchen table with Caton, speaking in low tones so as not to wake Emma. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "You're not just a traveler, are you?" Caton was silent for a long moment, his fingers tracing the grain of the wooden table. "I was scout for Army for 5 years. Now I am between worlds, not fully Apache anymore, not white man either. And now? Now I track men like those who came today, men who prey on others." He looked up at her, his dark eyes reflecting the lamplight. "The marshal I spoke of is real. John Everett, a good man. He hired me to find those 3. Sarah absorbed this information, feeling both relief and concern. "So they will be back?" "Yes, they need somewhere to hide. Somewhere to rest before crossing into Mexico." Caton's gaze was steady. "They will come at night, tomorrow maybe." Sarah felt fear rise in her throat but pushed it down. "Then we'll be ready." As the wind continued to howl outside, a strange sense of calm settled over Sarah. For the first time since Thomas died, she didn't feel alone against the world. And as she looked at the stoic man across from her, she realized there was something else too. A spark of connection she hadn't expected to find in this desolate place. The next morning broke clear and still, the dust storm having passed in the night. Sarah awoke to the sound of hammering and found Caton reinforcing the back door of the station house with additional wooden braces. "You think they'll try to break in?" she asked, tightening the shawl around her shoulders against the early morning chill. Caton nodded without pausing his work. "Men like that, they don't give up easily, especially when they have nowhere else to go." Sarah watched him work, his movements efficient and precise. "You've done this before." "Protected people?" Caton set down the hammer and turned to face her. "Yes." "And the people you were protecting, did they survive?" Something flickered across his face, a shadow of old pain. "Not all of them." The honesty of his response touched Sarah deeply. No false promises, no bravado, just truth. "I need to check the perimeter," Caton said, changing the subject. "Look for signs of their return." As he headed out, Emma came bounding. Down the stairs, her nightgown rumpled from sleep. "Where's Mr. Caton going, Mama?" "Just checking around outside, sweetheart." Sarah smoothed her daughter's tangled curls. "How would you like to help me make a special breakfast today?" While they prepared a simple meal of cornmeal mush with dried apples, Emma chattered happily. "I like Mr. Caton. He's like the warriors in my storybook, but real." Sarah smiled despite her anxiety. "He's certainly been kind to help us." "Is he going to stay forever?" Emma asked, her blue eyes wide with hope. Sarah's heart squeezed. "No, honey. Mr. Caton has his own life to get back to once the danger has passed." Emma frowned thoughtfully, stirring the pot with more force than necessary. "But he doesn't have a family, Mama. He told me so when you were getting firewood yesterday. He said his family was killed in a fight with soldiers long ago." Sarah hadn't known this detail, and it made her chest ache for the solitary man. "That's very sad, but it doesn't mean he wants to stay with us." "Why not?" Emma persisted. "We don't have Papa anymore, and he doesn't have anybody. We could be his family." "Emma," Sarah said gently, "it's not that simple. Mr. Caton is from a different world than ours. But he said he's between worlds, Emma countered, clearly having overheard more than Sarah realized. So maybe our world could be his new one. Sarah was saved from responding by Caton's return. He entered quietly, removing his hat as he stepped inside. Any sign of them? Sarah asked. Not yet, but they will come. He sniffed the air appreciatively. Food smells good. We made it special for you, Emma announced proudly. They ate together in companionable silence, the morning sun streaming through the windows. Sarah couldn't help but notice how natural it felt, the three of them sharing a meal like this. For a moment, she allowed herself to imagine what it might be like if this were permanent, having someone strong and reliable by her side again, a partner to face life's challenges with. She quickly pushed the thought away. Such daydreams were dangerous and impractical. The stagecoach should arrive today if the creek has receded, Sarah said, returning to more practical matters. We'll have passengers to attend to. Caton shook his head. No stage today. Marshal Everett will have stopped it. Too dangerous with those men still free. But we need those supplies, Sarah said, worry creeping into her voice. And without the income from passengers, I will hunt, Caton offered simply. Bring meat for your table. Before Sarah could respond, Emma piped, Up, can I go too, please? I want to learn how to hunt. Absolutely not, Sarah said firmly. It's too dangerous. Your mother is right, Caton agreed. You stay, help prepare. That is important work too. Emma looked disappointed but nodded solemnly. As Caton prepared to leave, Sarah followed him. Onto the porch. You don't have to do this, you've already done more than enough. Caton turned to face her, his expression softening slightly. You gave water and food when others might have turned me away. Apache do not forget kindness. Is that the only reason you're helping us? Sarah asked before she could stop herself. For a moment, something unspoken passed between them, a current of connection that transcended their different worlds. No, he said quietly, not the only reason. With that, he mounted his horse and rode off toward the distant hills. As the day progressed, Sarah kept Emma busy with chores, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy despite the tension hanging over them. They cleaned the guest rooms, tended the garden, and practiced Emma's reading lessons. Late in the afternoon, as the sun began its descent toward the horizon, Caton returned with a brace of rabbits and a wild turkey. Sarah felt a wave of relief at his safe return, stronger than she wanted to admit. You've brought enough for several days, she remarked, as they prepared the meat together. Good, Caton replied. After tonight you may need it. The simple statement sent a chill down Sarah's spine. You're certain they'll come tonight? Yes, I found their tracks. They circled back, watching the station from the ridge. He pointed east. They wait for darkness. Sarah's hands trembled slightly as she continued her work. Emma shouldn't be here when they come. Nowhere safer to send her, Caton said pragmatically. Next farm too far. Then we'll hide her in the root cellar, Sarah decided. There's a small space behind the shelves where she can stay until it's over. As dusk fell, they made preparations. Caton positioned himself near the front windows with a clear view of the approach. Sarah kept her shotgun close as she prepared. A simple dinner, her nerves stretched thin. Emma, sensing the gravity of the situation despite their attempts to shield her, was unusually quiet. As they sat down to eat, she suddenly looked at Caton with solemn eyes. Are the bad men going to hurt us, Mr. Caton? Caton met her gaze directly. No, little one. I will not let them. Promise? Emma pressed. I promise, he said. And in that moment, Sarah believed him completely. As the darkness deepened outside, Sarah helped Emma prepare for bed, knowing full well her daughter wouldn't actually be sleeping in her room tonight. Listen carefully, sweetheart, Sarah said as she tucked Emma's favorite blanket around her shoulders. If you hear anything loud or scary tonight, you remember what we practiced. You go straight to the cellar and hide in the special spot, Emma nodded bravely. And I don't come out until you or Mr. Caton comes to get me. That's right. Sarah hugged her tightly. You're such a brave girl. When she returned downstairs, she found Caton extinguishing most of the lamps, leaving only one burning dimly. "Better to see them coming than for them to see us," he explained as they settled into their watchful waiting. Sarah found herself studying Caton's profile in the faint light. The strong line of his jaw, the proud set of his shoulders, the watchful alertness in his posture. "Tell me about your people," she said softly, partly from genuine interest and partly to distract herself from the growing dread. Caton was silent for so long she thought he might not answer. Then he began to speak, his deep voice barely above, a whisper as he told her of Apache traditions, of their connection to the land, of values that guided their lives. Sarah listened, entranced, finding unexpected parallels between his beliefs and her own. "And your family?" she ventured carefully. "Emma mentioned..." "Dead," he said simply. "Long ago, during the wars. I'm sorry." "As I am sorry for your loss," he replied. "Your husband. Emma speaks of him often." "Thomas was a good man," Sarah said, her throat tightening. "He built this place, dreamed of making it prosper." "You honor him by continuing his dream," Caton observed. Their conversation dwindled into a comfortable silence. Outside, the desert. Night was alive with sounds, the distant howl of coyotes, the whisper of wind through scrub brush, the occasional call of a nightbird. Then, abruptly, those natural sounds ceased. The silence that fell was unnatural and alarming. "They're here," Caton whispered. Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as she gripped the shotgun tighter. Caton motioned for her to move away from the window, his movements slow and deliberate to avoid making noise. "How many?" she whispered. "All three," he murmured back. "Approaching. From different directions." He pointed to indicate their positions. Sarah thought of Emma upstairs and prayed the child would remember to hide if trouble started. She had never imagined her life would come to this moment, defending her home against outlaws with a near stranger as her only ally. "What do we do?" Her voice was barely audible. "Wait," Caton replied. "Let them make the first mistake." Minutes stretched endlessly as they listened to the subtle sounds of men trying to move stealthily. A boot scuffing on gravel, the faint creak of a floorboard on the porch, then came a hiss from outside. "Fletcher, there's a horse in the back. That engine is still here." A muttered curse was the reply, followed by hushed conference they couldn't quite make out. Suddenly, the front door burst open with a crash. Fletcher stood there, his gun drawn. "Come out where I can see you," he bellowed. In one fluid motion, Caton upended the heavy oak table, creating a barrier between them and the door. He pulled Sarah down behind it just as a shot rang out, splintering the wood above their heads. "You're outgunned, Injun," Fletcher shouted. "Give it up now, and maybe we'll let the woman live." Caton's face remained impassive, but his eyes burned, with controlled intensity. "The back door," he whispered to Sarah. "The other two will try it soon." As if on cue, they heard the sound of wood splintering as someone tried to force the reinforced back entrance. "It's holding for now," Sarah whispered, "but it won't last long." Caton nodded grimly. "When I move, you fire the shotgun at the front. Ewor. Not to hit, just to force them back." He pointed to a side window. "I will go out that way, circle behind them." Sarah wanted to protest. The odds seemed impossible. But there was no time. She nodded her agreement. "Now," Caton said, springing into motion. Sarah rose enough to level the shotgun and fired at the open front doorway. The blast was deafening in the confined space, but it had the intended effect. Fletcher ducked back with a shout of alarm. In that moment of confusion, Caton smashed the side window with his elbow and slipped out into the darkness. Sarah quickly reloaded the shotgun, her hands shaking but determined. From upstairs came a frightened cry. Emma had awakened. "Emma," Sarah called. "Remember what we practiced. Go to the special hiding place now." She heard the patter of small feet and prayed her daughter would reach safety. "Send out the engine." "We'll let you live," Fletcher called from outside, his earlier confidence now tinged with uncertainty. "He's gone for the marshal," Sarah shouted back, hoping to sow doubt. "They'll be here by dawn." A silence followed. then urgent whispers as the outlaws conferred. Sarah used the moment to move to a better position, slipping behind the solid oak counter. The back door finally gave way with a crash. Sarah swung the shotgun toward the sound, but hesitated. In the darkness, she couldn't be certain who was coming through. A figure lunged into the room, and in the faint lamplight, she recognized Dawson, the younger outlaw. She fired, the shot going wide but forcing him to dive for cover. "She's behind the counter," he yelled to his companions. Footsteps pounded on the porch as Fletcher rushed the front entrance again. Sarah was caught between two attackers, her position increasingly desperate. Then came a sound she'd never forget. A high, ululating war cry from outside that raised the hair on her neck. It was followed immediately by a strangled shout and the thud of a body hitting the ground. "Reeves, what happened to Reeves?" Fletcher called, his voice rising in panic. No answer came. Instead, there was only the eerie silence of the desert night. Dawson fired wildly toward the back door, his shots embedding themselves in the walls. "He's out there! The Apache is out there!" The fear in his voice was palpable, and Sarah realized that Caton had achieved exactly what he wanted, to unnerve his opponents, to make them forget their advantage of numbers. A shadow passed by the broken window, too quickly to target, but enough to draw Dawson's fire. 3 shots rang out, followed by the ominous click of an empty chamber. "I'm out!" Dawson cried desperately to Fletcher. "Give me your extra gun!" Fletcher cursed. "Stay where you are, I'm coming to you." As Fletcher moved from the front door toward his companion, Sarah saw her chance. She rose and fired the shotgun, directly at him. The shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him around with a howl of pain. His gun clattered to the floor. Before Dawson could react, Caton appeared at the back door, as silent and deadly as a mountain lion. In his hand was a long hunting knife that caught the faint lamplight. "Drop your weapon," he commanded. Dawson looked from Caton to the wounded Fletcher, then to Sarah with her reloaded shotgun. Slowly he raised his hands in surrender. The fight was over almost as quickly as it had begun. With Fletcher and Dawson securely tied to chairs, and Reeves unconscious but alive outside, Sarah finally allowed herself to breathe. She rushed upstairs, to the root cellar, calling for Emma. "Mama?" came a small voice from behind the shelves. "Is it safe now?" "Yes, sweetheart," Sarah said, gathering her daughter into her arms. "Mr. Caton kept his promise. We're safe." As dawn broke over the desert, painting the landscape in hues of gold and rose, Marshal John Everett arrived with 2 deputies, right on schedule, just as Caton had predicted. "You've done well, Caton," the marshal said as his men loaded the subdued outlaws into a prison wagon. "These 3 have been leaving a trail of misery across 3 territories. They would have killed us if not for him," Sarah added, standing nearby with Emma's hand firmly in hers. Everett nodded. "The reward money is yours by rights," he told Caton. $500 for the 3 of them. Caton's expression remained impassive, but he shook his head. "I have no use for it." The marshal seemed unsurprised. "As you wish." He tipped his hat to Sarah. "Ma'am, the stage should be through tomorrow. We'll spread the word that the Willow Creek station is open for business again." After the lawmen departed with their prisoners, a strange quiet settled over the station. Sarah busied herself cleaning up the damage from the fight, while Emma followed Caton outside, peppering him with questions about how he had captured the outlaws. When Sarah finally stepped onto the porch, she found them sitting side by side on the steps, Caton patiently showing Emma how to weave a small basket from desert grasses. "Will you be leaving soon?" Sarah asked, her heart constricting at the thought. Caton looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers. "The danger is gone. You are safe now." "Yes," she agreed softly. "Thanks to you." Emma looked between them, her young face suddenly serious. She stood up and walked directly to Caton, placing her small hand on his arm. "Please marry my mama," she said with childlike directness. "Then you can stay with us forever." "Emma," Sarah gasped, mortified. But Caton didn't laugh or dismiss the child's words. Instead, he regarded Emma thoughtfully. "Why would you want that, little one?" he asked gently. Because you make Mama smile again, Emma replied simply. And you don't. Have a family and we need someone strong to help us and… She hesitated, suddenly shy. I think you like us too. Sarah felt heat rush to her cheeks. Emma, Mr. Caton has his own life. He was just helping us because we were in trouble. Caton stood slowly, his expression unreadable as he looked out at the desert landscape. I have walked between two worlds for many years, he said quietly, never belonging to either. He turned to face Sarah, and for the first time, she saw vulnerability in his eyes. Perhaps there is a third path, one I had not considered. Sarah's heart beat faster. What are you saying? I am saying, he replied carefully, that your daughter speaks truth in her innocent way. I have found something here I did not expect to find. He gestured to the station house, to the small garden, to Emma, and finally to Sarah herself. A place where worlds meet, where perhaps I could belong. Emma beamed triumphantly, but Sarah was too overwhelmed to speak immediately. The reward money, Caton continued. It could help rebuild what was damaged, expand the station, make it thrive as your husband dreamed. Are you proposing a business arrangement? Sarah asked, trying to understand. A rare smile softened Caton's features. I'm proposing a beginning. The rest would come with time if you wish it. Sarah looked at this man who had risked his life for them, who had shown kindness to her daughter, who understood loss as deeply as she did. Different as their backgrounds were, she recognized in him a kindred spirit, someone who knew what it meant to stand at crossroads, to forge a new path when old ones were closed. I think, she said slowly, a smile spreading across her face, that beginnings are exactly what this place needs. Emma clapped her hands in delight and threw her arms around Caton's waist. After a moment's hesitation, he placed a gentle hand on her head. As the sun climbed higher in the desert sky, Sarah looked at the unlikely family forming before her eyes. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be prejudices to face, challenges to overcome, a relationship to build slowly and carefully. But for the first time since Thomas's death, the future held promise instead of merely survival. The stagecoach would arrive tomorrow, bringing new travelers with their stories and needs. But tonight, there would be 3 at the station house, a woman rediscovering hope, a child whose innocent wisdom had bridged worlds, and a warrior who had finally found a battle worth winning, the one for home and family.